everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of the Kitabi Karwan Podcast. As you know, I generally started this off as an interview series wherein I would talk to authors or translators or different kind of people involved with the book industry to talk about their experience with the world, right? But something that I realized is that I want to expand this podcast to talk about almost everything bookish in that sense, and so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be making this podcast about books and books alone, and well, reading. So for the first episode, I actually decided to answer a question which I get asked quite frequently, and that's something I'm going to be doing for the next couple of episodes. That is, answer a few questions about reading and books that keep coming my way through my Instagram page, right? And the first one is from a young 18-year-old guy who texted me on Instagram saying that he's a beginner to reading and he wants to start out reading, and how should he go about the process. And that's what this episode's going to be about. I'm going to be talking about how does one actually start reading, right? So for me, I think the first question that anyone should ask themselves when they want to start reading is, why do they want to start reading? That becomes a very important thing. So that's something that I've realized that, and I think I've been guilty of this in my earlier years, wherein a lot of people who don't read books and actually want to start reading books come to it due to a weird form of peer pressure, wherein books are marketed as a one-stop solution to knowledge, right? That, oh, you should read books that would make you knowledgeable or intelligent, which as an idea in general sounds true, but I think I'm going to be upsetting a lot of reading puriticals out there, or purists for that matter, when I say this, that it's overhyped. I think knowledge consumption through any form is perfectly fine. It depends on each person as to how they wish to consume knowledge, right? So books are a great source for consuming knowledge and increasing your mental abilities. But that being said, the same can happen through podcasts or documentaries or just attending courses on that particular topic. So, yeah, that becomes a very important part of why you're trying to read, right? And when you answer that question, right? So, if your answer is that, well, you don't have an answer, I think you should reconsider, because so this is something that, again, I read in a book ages ago, which I completely agree with, that when you're trying to establish a new habit, this comes from James Clear's Atomic Habit. Unless you have a purpose behind that habit, or you can sell yourself the idea of why you wish to do a particular activity, you won't really be able to do it with complete dedication. So, well, yeah, that's the first thing you ought to answer, right? Why are you trying to read books? If you're trying, so once you have the answer to that question, and more or less it broadly falls into a couple of generic answers, which is completely fine. It just has to fall within one of those, right? If it's peer pressure, please consider evaluating your choice. If it is that you wish to explore a new hobby, welcome to this beautiful world. It's excellent. If it is because that you believe that you feel that you wish to improve yourself and you think books are a good conduit, again, that's great. Uh, or you just want, I don't know, you want to escape into a world of stories, or you wish to distract yourself from something. I am not kidding when I say this. I have had people who've turned to reading for escaping depression, for walking away from bad breakups, or for getting inspiration. So there are all sorts of things which drive you to. So why do I keep harping on what your reason behind reading is? Because that influences what you're going to pick up first, right? As an example, someone who wishes to gain knowledge, in the sense they wish to develop a more, say, a better GK, right? A better general knowledge, or just a better understanding of how the world works, asking them to read, say, the Harry Potter series, right, would be doing them a huge disservice, right? They would not be able to achieve the purpose that they are trying to achieve. So that's why that becomes a really important thing. So once you have the answer to that question, the next thing that you need to know is that books are largely divided into two categories: fiction and non-fiction. Fiction books are generally things that haven't happened in real life. These are stories, these are versions which have been creatively dreamt up by the author or the translator, and right, and they're presented to you. Not to say that they aren't knowledgeable, because a lot of powerful works of literature, like fiction, that is, are actually profound works of reflection of society and gives you deep insight into how things work, right? A brilliant example of that is other works by George Orwell, right? Animal Farm and 1984 are an excellent reflection of how a totalitarian society could work. So that's one part. The other part is non-fiction, which covers biographies, memoirs, or bland textbooks, or just books on topics which on things that exist, and write detailed research books. And again, this, so you ideally can read both, but again, if you have a preference at the beginning, I would advise that you stick to that area, right? If you wish to read books for entertainment, I would advise you stick to fiction. But if you are seeking knowledge, I would advise non-fiction. uh, why is this so is because if you're looking to build reading as a long-term habit, it is very important that the first few interactions that you have while reading a book, right, like, are enjoyable for you, to form those happy connections in your mind, so that you keep coming back to the activity. And once you're broadly comfortable with the activity, you kind of start moving into areas which you are uncomfortable with. So yeah, that's the second thing that you ought to do, is to decide what kind of books you wish to read. um, so once you've decided that, you should ideally look at, so now uh, there's no polite way of saying this, but there are books that are easy, there are books that are difficult, and books that are absolutely incorrigible, extremely difficult to digest. This is not to comment on their quality as standalone books, but I'm solely speaking from the perspective of a reader who's trying to read, right? So easy books are very simply written, they don't have complex sentences, they don't try to bring about they don't have too many metaphors hidden behind them. And on the other hand, you have a very like complicated books which probably will take you like 5 minutes just to read and understand what's written on one single page. So I think beginners should ideally avoid all these heavy books, and that happens all the time because uh, people end up trying to read something as complicated as War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy as their first book, and that simply bores them. Or if you are, say, an engineer who has no understanding of economics, and to understand economics dives headfirst into Raghuram Rajan's The Third Pillar, you are going to hate the book and inevitably hate the process because you'll find it boring or something that's too difficult to understand. So I would advise that you start with simple books. So feel free to reach out to me or just DM me on Instagram for book recommendations, so that I can talk to you, I can help you figure out a book that you wish to read, right, based on what you like, what you don't like, and maybe from there we can see what would be a good fit for you to read, right? uh Apart from this, just a couple of pieces of advice which aren't necessarily for beginners, but I think will definitely help you read a book, or help you develop a love for reading books, or get into reading books as a regular habit or a hobby, right? My personal advice is to always juggle between a fiction and a non-fiction book. That is, so that whenever you feel that you need to change things up a bit, you can do so very easily. Second, don't hesitate to dabble with audiobooks. People consume knowledge, as I mentioned earlier, in different ways. Some people are better listeners than readers, and once you start understanding the joy of the written word, whether it's through a visual medium or whether it's through an audio medium, I think you'll start developing some more love for the act of reading books, I guess. So yeah, that's all of it from my end. Do write to us through our email ID or through our comments or through DMs about what you think are tips that should go out to beginners or to people who are reading books for the first time. And do hit like, share, and subscribe, and comment below, and let us know how you like this particular episode, or if there are particular topics that you wish for me to talk about, right? Thank you so much. Bye bye.